Patti LaBelle. She's 80 years old, and she just walked out of a New York boardroom with a $100 million check. Most people are retiring. Patti LaBelle is having a grandma flex so hard it's shaking the music industry. But here's the weird part. She's the only person on Earth who can dominate the Billboard charts and cause a nationwide Walmart emergency over a sweet potato pie at the same time. How did a shy kid from Philly go from a church choir to breaking the internet with a dessert? It started in 1960 with a group called the Ordettes, and a label boss who thought they didn't have the look until Patti opened her mouth. With over 50 million records sold and a trophy case heavy with Grammys, Patti is more than a singer. She's an American institution. But before the millions and the private jets, she was just Patricia Louise Holt, a shy kid in Southwest Philly back in 1944. By age 10, she was the powerhouse of her local church choir, finding her voice even as her family life hit the rocks with her parents' divorce. By 16, she wasn't just good, she was a problem for anyone else entering talent shows. She won it all and formed the Ordettes in 1960. But being a girl group in the 60s was a revolving door. Members left to get married or were pulled out by overly religious parents. Most people would have folded, but Patti kept the name alive on her own until she found the perfect lineup in Cindy Birdsong, Sarah Dash, and Nona Hendrix. When they auditioned for local label owner Harold Robinson, he wasn't impressed by their look. He was ready to pass, until she opened her mouth to sing, "I Sold My Heart to the Junk Man." Her voice didn't just change his mind, it stole his soul. He signed them, gave her the name LaBelle, French for the beautiful, and the rest was history. The road wasn't all gold records and glitz, though. After the group eventually split, Patti had to reinvent herself from scratch in 1977. She spent years grinding until 1983, when her sixth solo album finally blew the roof off the R&B charts. But Patti's legacy isn't just high notes and hit records. She's been a warrior for HIV/AIDS awareness and the LGBTQ+ community for decades. And let's be real, she's the only person on Earth who can dominate the Billboard charts and the bakery aisle at the same time. In 2015, her Good Life sweet potato pies literally broke the internet. They were flying off Walmart shelves so fast that it caused a nationwide shortage. It turns out, America has two true loves, a legendary high note and a really, really good pie. Abigail Adams. Abigail Adams is dipping her quill in ink and preparing to threaten the future president of the United States. While the founding fathers are arguing over fonts and freedom in a smoke-filled room, Abigail is dropping a truth bomb. Remember the ladies, or we will foment a rebellion. She isn't just a supportive wife, she's a political sniper. She had zero formal education, and her own mother thought her husband was just a country lawyer in a fancy suit. Yet she ended up running a revolution and a dynasty from a farm in Braintree, while John was away playing diplomat. So, she adds a little piece of advice that history would never forget. Remember the ladies, and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Now, Abigail wasn't just a legendary advocate for women's rights and a fierce opponent of slavery. She was the ultimate secret weapon. Behind America's second president was a woman who was part confidant, part political advisor, and all-around genius. She was born into a high society family in Weymouth, Massachusetts in 1744. Her dad was a big-deal minister, and her mom came from the Quincy political dynasty. Basically, in colonial terms, she was born into the VIP section. But here's the kicker. Like every other woman back then, she had zero formal education. She was homeschooled by her mom and used her family's library as a personal training ground. She didn't just read books, she devoured them until she became one of the most erudite first ladies to ever grace the White House. And she did it all without a single student loan. When she met John Adams in 1759, she was only 15. Her dad liked the kid, but her mom? Not so much. See, John was a Harvard grad, sure, but to her mom, he was just a country lawyer, which is really just a polite way of saying a farmer in a three-piece suit. But Abigail saw the vision. They tied the knot in 1764 and literally rode off on a single horse to their new life on a farm in Braintree. While John was off being a revolutionary and a diplomat, Abigail was back home running the entire show. She raised the kids, managed the farm, and handled the family business with the kind of administrative ice in her veins that would make a modern CEO sweat. John gave her full control of the checkbook, which, for the 1700s, was basically the ultimate trust fall. Their relationship wasn't just a marriage, it was a long-distance masterclass in political strategy. Through hundreds of letters, they built a nation. And in that famous 1776 letter, she didn't just ask nicely, she warned him that All men would be tyrants if they could. Turns out, while the founding fathers were busy, the founding mother of feminism was already calling them out on their nonsense. With Abigail as his backbone, John became the second president, and they became the first couple to ever move into the White House. She laid a foundation so solid that her son, John Quincy Adams, took the presidency years later. She didn't just raise a family, she built a dynasty. And she did it while reminding the boys that freedom belongs to everyone, not just the guys in the wigs. Elizabeth Freeman. If 1 minute's freedom had been offered to me, and I had been told I must die at the end of that minute, I would have taken it. Elizabeth Freeman just said that to a room full of her oppressors, and the silence is deafening. She was given away as a wedding gift like an 18th century toaster, but she's currently suing the most powerful men in Massachusetts for her life. She doesn't have a lawyer yet, and she has a permanent scar on her arm from a red-hot kitchen shovel, but she's about to win a legal war that the system was designed to make her lose. Talk about a mic drop moment. She basically told the entire legal system she'd rather spend 60 seconds as a free woman than a lifetime in their shadow. The judge stares her down. The silence is deafening, and then he drops the gavel. Not only is she free, but the court orders her former master to pay her 30 shillings in damages. The crowd is stunned. For the first time in history, the legal system actually did its job for someone it was designed to ignore. But how did a woman who was literally given away as a wedding gift, like some kind of 18th century toaster, end up winning a legal war against the elite? It started years earlier on the Hogaboom plantation. Freeman was sharp, strategic, and had zero tolerance for bullies. While her master, Colonel John Ashley, was mostly hands-off, his wife was a nightmare in a corset. One day, Mrs. tried to strike Freeman's little sister with a red-hot kitchen shovel. Freeman didn't think. She just moved. She took the hit, shielding her sister and ending up with a permanent scar on her arm. Instead of hiding the injury, she wore it like a badge of honor. Anytime someone asked what happened, she'd just point at the boss and say, "Ask the missus." That is some elite-level pettiness, and I am here for it. The real turning point came when she overheard the local elites, including her own master, discussing the Sheffield Declaration and the new Massachusetts Constitution. They were chanting slogans about how all men are born free and equal. While the guys in powdered wigs were probably just talking about their own taxes, Freeman heard those words and thought, does that include me? Because it sounds like it includes me. She didn't wait for permission. She marched up to Theodore Sedgwick, a high-profile attorney, and basically told him to get to work. To play the system's own game, they added an enslaved man named Brom to the case, knowing the 1780s court wasn't exactly ready for a solo woman's revolution. They won. They actually won. Once the shackles were off, she ditched the name Mum Bet and rechristened herself Elizabeth Freeman. She didn't just survive, she thrived. She became a healer, a midwife, and eventually a landowner. In an era where she wasn't even supposed to be a person, she ended up being the most successful person in the room. Now that is what you call a legendary comeback. Rachel Revere. Paul Revere is the most wanted man in America, and Rachel Revere is stuck behind enemy lines with 15 children. That's not a family, that's a small infantry unit. While Paul is famous for screaming about the British in the middle of the night, Rachel is the one playing a high-stakes game of bribe the redcoat to smuggle her entire clan out of a locked-down Boston. Paul was the face of the revolution, but Rachel was the CFO, making sure the revolution didn't bounce any checks. But to understand how she pulled this off, we have to go back. Rachel was born in 1745 into a world where women were mostly expected to stay quiet. But Rachel was built differently. Highly educated and independent, she didn't even marry until she was 27, which in the 1700s was practically the age of a prehistoric fossil. Fate stepped in on a summer evening in 1773. Paul Revere was a grieving widower with 6 kids and a 5-month-old baby, just trying to keep his head above water. Rachel didn't just offer him a hand, she offered to save his entire world. They married that same year, and she eventually added 8 more kids to the mix. While Paul was out playing Midnight Rider and becoming a literal legend, Rachel was the one actually keeping the lights on. She ran the silversmithing business with a level of efficiency that would make a modern CEO sweat, collecting debts, managing growth, and funneling cash and supplies to Paul on the front lines. Basically, Paul was the face of the revolution, but Rachel was the CFO, making sure the revolution didn't bounce any checks. When Paul's famous ride put a massive bullseye on his back, he couldn't return to Boston without ending up in a British noose. So, Rachel stepped up. During the siege of Boston, she navigated the chaos, outsmarted the British guards, and relocated her entire household to Watertown. Rachel Revere wasn't just the wife of a patriot, she was the engine that kept the Revere name alive. Proof that while Paul was busy warning everyone that the British were coming, Rachel was the one making sure they had a home to come back to. The $500 million Ladies of Liberty represents more than just a celebration of the past. It is a profound commitment to the future of the American narrative. By centering the often overlooked contributions of women throughout our nation's 250-year journey, this video ensures that the story of our independence is told with the complexity and inclusivity it deserves.